The film begins with a radio broadcast stating that Tokyo is currently experiencing a surge in criminal cases, ranging from assault, kidnapping, to murder. During these various cases, a woman is seen hires a private detective to find her missing sister. After her attempts to report it to the police yielding no proper response, she decides to hire a private detective from a group called City Hunter. Without delay, the City Hunter team begins investigating the case, where we are introduced to a detective named Rio Seba. Although renowned as a private detective, Rio is actually a former Special Forces member highly skilled in hand-to-hand combat and warfare strategy. However, after leaving that line of work, Rio formed the City Hunter group with his friend named Hideyuki Makimura. But among all his strengths, Rio has one weakness, where he cannot resist beautiful women. Not long after, Rio eventually finds the woman's missing sister being surrounded by the Yakuza. At that moment, Rio immediately displays his extraordinary skills to incapacitate them all. Later, Rio meets the woman's sister named Kurumi, but the girl runs away in fear. This prompts Rio to call Hideyuki to chase after her. As they almost catch up with Kurumi, other Yakuza members suddenly ambush them, and they both have to fight back the Yakuza again. Unfortunately, Kurumi managed to escape again, even managing to jump over a building. After that, Rio instructs Hideyuki to chase her by car, while he himself would chase her by jumping over the building. But instead of looking cool, Rio ends up crashing into a trash can. Shortly after, Rio and Hideyuki manage to find Kurumi's trail and chase her to a narrow alley. After finding her, they discovered that Kurumi's neck veins had turned black like she had been cursed. Additionally, she also became very strong. When Kurumi managed to escape again, Hideyuki found a strange liquid falling from her pocket. Curious, Hideyuki immediately takes the strange liquid and hides it. He even refuses to show the liquid to Rio until he investigates it himself. Not long after the City Hunter's failure, a police officer named Seiko warns the team. She is a skilled investigator who always follows the rules. It turns out that Seiko strongly disapproves of City Hunter's methods, especially since Hideyuki is her former colleague who chose to leave the police force to help Rio. Before leaving, Seiko and her commander warn City Hunter not to interfere in Kurumi's case again. After returning from the mission, Rio accompanies Hideyuki to a restaurant as Hideyuki has dinner plans with his sister. On the way, Hideyuki tells Rio that Kurumi is a cosplayer who often creates content where all her content is greatly admired by men like Rio. Upon knowing this, Rio becomes even more determined to find the girl. Shortly after, at the restaurant, Hideyuki met his younger sister named Kaori. At that place, Hideyuki intends to tell his sister that he is not her biological brother, as Kaori is mature enough to know. However, as Hideyuki is about to tell her, a driver suddenly emerges from the truck and suddenly attacks him. Strangely, the driver also has black veins on his neck like Kurumi. Moreover, the driver was very strong and still attacked even though he had been stabbed with a knife. Consequently, Hideyuki has to exert all his strength. Not long after, Rio arrives at the restaurant when Hideyuki has already killed the driver, but unfortunately, Hideyuki has lost a lot of blood. At that moment, Hideyuki hands over the liquid belonging to Kurumi and embraces Rio tightly. Before taking his last breath, Hideyuki asks Rio to take care of Kaori. A month after Hideyuki's death, Rio sees a notice board at the station. There's a message on the board saying XYZ Kaori, where Kaori needs his help in investigating her brother's death. It turns out, City Hunter is a secret agency that can tackle all criminal cases. Therefore, Rio is more suited to be called a special agent rather than a private detective. And anyone needing his services must write the XYZ code on the station's notice board. However, Rio decides not to accept Kaori's request so she can come to terms with her brother's death. Meanwhile, Seiko is investigating Hideyuki's death by checking the CCTV at the restaurant, where Seiko sees Hideyuki handing over a strange liquid to Rio. Upon seeing this, Seiko becomes suspicious that Hideyuki's killer is related to other violent cases in Tokyo, as recently many people have been going berserk and attacking without reason. And she believes that everything has something to do with the liquid now in Rio's possession, or perhaps there's a syndicate spreading a zombie virus. On the other side, Kaori is wandering alone in the Shinjuku area. After walking for quite some time, Kaori finally encounters Rio, who is drunk with two women. After seeing this, Kaori appears angry because Rio doesn't seem sad about Hideyuki's death. After that, Kaori decides to investigate the case alone. Unfortunately, Kaori is tempted by two men that taking advantage of her situation. Fortunately, Rio notices this and keeps her away from them. It turns out, Rio still cares about Kaori, but he can't express his concern like a normal person. Afterward, Rio asks Kaori to go home as it was already late, and instead of obeying Rio's words, Kaori follows him home. After that, Kaori searches around the house hoping to find clues, but she only finds videos and magazines. After searching every corner of the house, Kaori finally discovers Rio's secret room and finds a pistol there. Rio then enters and says the pistol belongs to Hideyuki. He also advises Kaori to accept her brother's death for her own well-being. On the other hand, Kurumi is seen watching the police who have just found a body in the middle of the city, and it seems Kurumi knows about the person's murder. After that, Kurumi returns to her hiding place in the boarding house. The following night, Kaori meets Rio again in the Shinjuku area, and once again she persuades him to investigate her brother's death. But Rio says that he has switched professions and is now a dancer at a nightclub. But Kaori doesn't immediately believe him and forced Rio to prove it. And sure enough, Rio immediately danced as Kaori asked. After seeing that, Kaori felt embarrassed throughout the event. After finishing dancing, Rio enters a VIP room and Kaori follows him again. Inside the room, there are three gangsters intercepting him, even though Rio came peacefully. As they are in a standoff, a mafia member suddenly came in and stops their actions. Not only that, the mafia member even orders his assistant to beat up the gangsters. It turns out the mafia member greatly respects Rio, and he has even become his informant for certain cases. Upon hearing Rio's name, the gangsters immediately become frightened and apologize because they thought Rio was just a pervert customer. At that moment, Rio wants to ask for information about Hideyuki's death. But before that, the mafia member tells Rio to put on pants first so he won't get cold. Shortly after, the mafia member says that Hideyuki's death is related to Kurumi and many other cases in Tokyo. Because in the last 3 months, many young people have been kidnapped by a dangerous syndicate. And according to his observations, this syndicate is testing a drug that can make people act like zombies. Interestingly, out of hundreds of people kidnapped, only Kurumi managed to escape and still use her brain normally. After hearing the mafia member's explanation, Kaori immediately leaves to search for Kurumi. By coincidence, Kaori sees Kurumi in the Shinjuku area. And without hesitation, Kaori persuades her to talk for a moment. But for some reason, Kurumi looks scared and runs away, entering a very crowded nightclub. Not long after, Kurumi is seen confronted by a gangster dressed in black who suddenly points a gun at her. In another corner, the gangster also has a friend ready to kidnap Kurumi. At the same time, Rio, who sees this, immediately takes action, but unfortunately, the gangsters manage to escape without leaving a trace. On the other hand, Kurumi, who is trying to escape, suddenly falls and faints on the side of the road. After that, Kaori takes her to Rio's house to be treated. When Kurumi wakes up, Rio tells her that her sister has been looking for her for the past month. But strangely, Kurumi looks confused and says that she doesn't have a sister. Upon hearing this, Rio becomes very angry because he has been tricked, and it seemed like the woman who hired him was part of the syndicate that kidnapped Kurumi. After that, Rio shows the liquid Hideyuki found while chasing her. Additionally, Rio also asks Kurumi to tell the truth about what happened to her. The scene then shows 3 months ago, where Kurumi was seen looking for her friend who mysteriously disappeared. When she started finding clues, Kurumi was suddenly kidnapped by a criminal syndicate. At that moment, Kurumi was taken to a laboratory and used as a test subject for their latest liquid. Whatever the purpose, but the criminal syndicate were definitely planning something very evil. In the present, after Kurumi felt better, she decided to leave because she didn't want to involve Rio and Kaori. But Kaori didn't let her go because there are a lot of bad people out there. Elsewhere, 2 mysterious individuals who previously attempted to abduct Kurumi are shown. It turns out they are members of a criminal syndicate called Union, and one of them is a woman who once claimed to be Kurumi's sister. After that, They apologize to the syndicate's leader named Kunio Kano, whose face was still hidden, for their failure to capture the target. Kano then gives his subordinates another chance to capture the target and kill anyone who gets in their way, and if they fail again, they will be eliminated. Upon saying this, Kano immediately sets an example by killing one of his subordinates. Apparently, all syndicate members have chips implanted in their necks. So, if they betray or fail their mission, the chip will be detonated by Kano. On the other hand, Rio decides to collaborate with Seiko. From her investigation, Seiko has blood test results from the captured perpetrators. And it turns out, all of them show the same indication, where they have been injected with an overdose of a liquid. Upon hearing this, Rio says that he actually knows about the drugs, because when Rio was a child, the drug already existed and spread in his environment and was often referred to as angel dust, where Rio was almost killed by someone using the drug. According to him, angel dust is a very dangerous drug because it can be abused to turn ordinary people into killing machines capable of wiping out an entire battalion of soldiers. Meanwhile, Seiko also discovers a shocking fact that Kaori's father was one of the victims of angel dust 20 years ago. At that time, Kaori, who was going on a rampage, was stopped by a policeman after successfully shooting her, and it turned out that the policeman was Hideyuki's father, who after that incident decided to adopt Kaori. Not long after, when Hideyuki became a policeman, his father instructed him to secretly investigate angel dust, so all this time Hideyuki knew about the Union Syndicate. Upon hearing Seiko's explanation, Rio fell silent after learning that it seemed like the syndicate members had deliberately killed Hideyuki because he knew about their secret. When Rio returns home, his mood immediately changes to cheerful when he sees Kurumi cosplaying as a cute cat. Apparently, Kurumi has been invited by a company that will hold a national cosplay event. After that, Rio forbids her to go so she won't be abducted again by gangsters. But Kurumi still wants to go because the event is the gathering place for original Japanese otaku. At the same time, Kaori persuades Rio to protect Kurumi at the festival, even showing a photo of a beautiful woman who is the CEO of the company organizing the festival. Instantly, Rio is easily persuaded because his weakness is beautiful and tempting women. Sometime later, the three of them go to the cosplay festival, where Kaori and Kurumi focus on their appearance, while Rio was busy paying attention to the beautiful women around him. As the event begins, Rio and Kaori stand guard to protect Kurumi. On the other hand, Kano's henchmen are also there, and one of them has aimed a rifle at Kurumi, while the other members begin to act. Luckily, Rio manages to save her with his jumping technique. But when he tries to take her away, Rio is confronted by another of Kano's henchmen, and he is also attacked with their deadly blows. At the same time, Kaori takes Kurumi to a safe place, where a police commander has just arrived. Finally, Kaori entrusts Kurumi to the police, while she will assist Rio in the fight. However, Kaori is unaware that Kano's henchmen have targeted her from atop the building. Upon seeing this, Rio immediately saved her, which made the otaku amazed by his actions. Where they seemed to think the brawl was part of the show, even cheering when Rio was beating up the gangsters' members. After defeating Kano's henchmen, Rio calls Seiko to take the members to the police station. But on the way to the police station, the chip in the woman's neck starts beeping. On the other hand, the police commander actually doesn't secure Kurumi, and instead, he confines her in a warehouse, then hands her over to Kano's henchmen for a few $100,000. However, unbeknownst to them, Kano has planted a bomb in his briefcase. After that, the gangsters take Kurumi and leave the police commander's body. Meanwhile, Rio has just treated the wound on his hand from the attack by Kano's henchmen. At the same time, Seiko contacts him and informs him about the death of Kano's henchmen. She said that it was very difficult for the Union Syndicate to reveal their secrets, so if any members were caught, they would be immediately executed. Instantly, Rio appears puzzled and unsure what to do next. Shortly after, while Rio is lost in thought on the rooftop listening to music, Kaori comes to apologize because things got chaotic because of her. If Kaori hadn't allowed Kurumi to go to the festival, everything would have been fine. While crying, Kaori then begs Rio to continue investigating the case for her brother's sake. Initially, Rio forbids her from getting involved again, but Kaori seems very determined. Finally, Rio invited Kaori to take revenge for what happened to Hideyuki together. On the other hand, Kurumi is seen wakes up in the Union laboratory, where she also sees her friend who was kidnapped by Kano's henchmen the other day. Additionally, Kurumi is shocked to see the CEO who organized the festival because it turns out the woman is not the real CEO but a scientist working with the Union Syndicate. After that, the woman faces Kano to show the latest results of the angel dust liquid, which is twice as powerful as the product from 20 years ago. However, instead of praising her performance, Kano immediately kills her. Finally, the face of the sect leader who holds great power in Tokyo is revealed. But to this day, no one has ever known about the Union Syndicate, even though it has a significant influence in the Japanese criminal world. After killing the woman scientist, Kano orders his henchmen to kill all the employees there. Kano then sees Kurumi, still in shock, and his plan is to take this girl to the Union headquarters for further research. Meanwhile, Seiko and other police officers find their commander's body, and Seiko is very disappointed to learn that her superior accepted bribes from the Union. Without hesitation, Seiko orders her subordinates to search the commander's room and find as many clues as possible. At the same time, Rio and Kaori are looking for Kurumi because they suspect that she has been kidnapped by the Union again. Fortunately, Rio managed to slip a tracker into Kurumi's earring, so they don't need to bother investigating her location. During the journey to Kurumi's location, Rio contacts the Mafia for information about the Union Syndicate. According to information from the Mafia, the syndicate has its headquarters in Central America and branches in many countries, including Japan. Not long after, Rio and Kaori arrived at a tunnel which was a former site of war, but strangely, there was no one there. After traversing the tunnel, they saw a building, which turned out to be the Union Laboratory, and they were shocked to find everyone there dead. Unfortunately, they didn't find Kurumi there. Additionally, Rio didn't sense any signs of life, and all they found were vials of angel dust. Unbeknownst to them, Kano's forces had already surrounded them. At that moment, not wanting to appear panicked, Rio pretended to be a food delivery driver ordered by Kano. However, the gangsters didn't believe his poor acting. As a result, Rio immediately ran away and hid behind a wall while waiting for the troops to approach. Then, with great agility, Rio fought them. While Rio was fighting with Kano's troops, Kaori did her best to not be a burden to him, and thanks to their teamwork, they managed to overwhelm the troops. When they successfully eliminated all the troops, Kano suddenly appeared while pointing a gun at Kurumi. At that moment, Kano praised Rio's extraordinary abilities, even offering him a chance to join the Union Syndicate. But as someone with integrity, Rio immediately rejected the offer without hesitation. As a result, Kano became enraged and unleashed one of his henchmen who had been submerged in angel dust. Additionally, Kano's henchman had been injected with Kurumi's blood, the best test subject in the Union laboratory, and Rio had to fight him. At the same time, Kaori secretly followed Kano, who was dragging Kurumi to the upper floor. Unexpectedly, the tunnel was directly connected to the Union Syndicate building in the center of Tokyo. At that moment, Kano ordered her to leave and not interfere. However, Kaori still tried to break the barrier glass in the building. Angered by this, Kano finally revealed that Kaori was an adopted child. Not only that, Kano also revealed that her biological father was a test subject for the Angel Dust Project, and her biological father was killed by Hideyuki's father. Upon hearing this, Kaori became hysterical and desperately wanted to punch Kano's face, but was hindered by the thick glass. Fortunately, Rio arrived at the right moment and immediately fight Kano. After making Kano helpless, Rio allowed Kaori to seek revenge with her own hands. At that moment, Kaori pulled out Hideyuki's pistol and pointed it at Kano's forehead. But unfortunately, Kaori couldn't bring herself to pull the trigger because she didn't want to become a killer. Upon seeing this, Rio immediately calmed Kaori down and assured her that Kano would surely get what he deserved. Not long after, Kano was suddenly approached by the Central Union helicopter. Initially, Kano thought they were there to pick him up, but the helicopter opened fire that killed Kano. After Kano was dead, the helicopter immediately left. After that, Seiko arrived with the police and medical team to secure Kaori and Kurumi. Sometime later, a month had passed quickly, and the police chose to close the union case because Kano had died. At the same time, Kaori visited Hideyuki's grave and prayed for him. Meanwhile, Kurumi has recovered and started pursuing a career as a cosplayer again, and her followers have even doubled because her story has become very popular on social media. Not only that, Kurumi also started getting more endorsements, making her life as a content creator flourish. At the end of the film, Kaori decides to stay with Rio and offers herself as his new partner. And if Rio dares to reject her, Kaori won't hesitate to throw away his entire video collection. Moral lesson from the story: when you're chasing after a girl, it's not always about looking cool or jumping over buildings. Sometimes, it's about knowing when to slow down and just take the stairs safely.